We're literally surrounded by potential energy sources that we throw away every single day. Things like plants, wood, even animal waste. And this idea of turning all that stuff into power, it's gaining huge momentum. But the big question is it the clean green solution we've all been hoping for? Or is it just clever greenwashing?
I mean, it sounds a little like science fiction, doesn't it? The idea that the banana peel you tossed out this morning could somehow help power the very device you're watching this on right now. Crazy, right? Well, believe it or not, it can. And that, right there, is the core promise of biomass energy. So what is biomass, really? Well, at its heart, it's simply energy that comes from organic stuff. Think about it. Fossil fuels are ancient history, taking millions of years to form. But biomass, we can grow more of it right now. And because of that, you're seeing companies and governments investing heavily, betting on it as a key piece of our future energy puzzle.
All right, so how does this all work in the real world? Let's kick things off with what many people think is its most promising form, biogas. We're talking about literally turning our trash into treasure. It's actually a pretty elegant circular system when you break it down. First, you gather up all that organic waste from farms, restaurants, even our homes, and you clean out all the junk, like plastic. Then, it all goes into this giant sealed, oxygen-free tank where microbes get to work. They basically digest all the waste and in the process release methane. That methane is captured as biogas, which we can use for electricity and heat. And the best part? The leftovers become this amazing nutrient-rich compost for farming. It's a closed loop. Nothing is wasted. And listen, this isn't some small-time experiment. Europe already has around 20,000 of these biogas plants, and some projections suggest that biomethane could cover a staggering 40% of the entire EU's gas demand by 2050. On top of that, these plants produce about 75% less CO2 emissions than a typical coal plant. That's a massive reduction. And here's the kicker, something that really sets it apart from wind and solar. As the expert Steve Kelly points out, biomass is on demand. You don't have to wait for the sun to shine or the wind to blow. If you need power, you get power. That kind of reliability is a huge, huge advantage. Okay, but it can't all be good news, right? And you'd be correct. There's a big catch, and its name is methane. The biogas is mostly methane, which is a greenhouse gas that's way, way more potent than CO2. So if these facilities leak, and let's be real, some of them are gonna leak, that escaping methane can seriously damage or even completely erase all those climate benefits. So you see, the devil is really in the details with this stuff. Which brings us to a much more controversial type of biomass, using crops to create biofuels for our cars, trucks, and planes. Chances are you've used biofuels without even realizing it. When you see that sticker at the gas pump that says may contain up to 10% ethanol, that's bioethanol, usually made from corn. And it's the same story for biodiesel, which comes from vegetable oils or animal fats and gets mixed right into standard diesel. It's already part of our fuel supply. But here's where we need a serious reality check. Even though they're at pretty much every gas station, biofuels make up a tiny 3% of all transportation fuel. 3%! It's just a drop in the ocean, which really begs the question, is all this effort even worth it? And that effort creates this huge, thorny problem known as the food versus fuel conflict. Just think about it. Every acre of land we use to grow corn for our cars is an acre that can't be used to grow food for people, or it's an acre that's not being left as a forest or a natural habitat for wildlife. It's a direct trade-off, and the stakes could not be higher. And this is where the argument for biofuels really starts to fall apart. A study in Germany came out with a jaw-dropping finding. They found that, using biofuels saved about 9.2 million tons of CO2. But if they had just left that same land alone and let it return to its natural state, it would have absorbed 16.4 million tons of CO2, nearly double. It turns out nature, left on its own, does a much better job. Okay, so this leads us to what is frankly the most shocking part of the entire biomass story. We're talking about taking our oldest energy source, burning wood, and industrializing it on a global scale. The fuel we're talking about is wood pellets, these little compressed cylinders of sawdust and wood chips. Now, that sounds fine, right? Just using up waste. But the demand for these pellets has gotten so huge that it's not just waste anymore. Investigators have found that whole trees from natural forests in North America and Eastern Europe are being clear-cut, processed into pellets, and shipped across the world just to be burned for electricity. And who's the king of this industry? The United States, by a long shot. The U.S. exports nearly 2/3 of the entire world's supply of wood pellets. And the biggest customers buying them up are the UK, the EU, South Korea, and Japan. They're using them to replace coal so they can hit their renewable energy targets. Now, why on earth would they do this? Well, it all comes down to how this stuff is classified. Officially, burning wood is considered renewable energy. And that classification unlocks massive government subsidies. In 2021 alone, the UK's largest power plant was given around €1 billion in public money just for burning wood pellets. Now, the industry's main defense is always, hey, we replant the trees so it's carbon neutral. But as this quote highlights, there's a world of difference between a 100-year-old forest and a field of tiny little saplings. You just can't replace the carbon storage of a mature tree overnight. It doesn't work that way. This whole process creates what scientists call a carbon debt. When you burn a tree, all the carbon it has stored for its entire life is released into the atmosphere instantly. Boom, a massive pulse of CO2. And studies show it takes anywhere from 44 to over 100 years for newly planted trees to grow enough to reabsorb that initial pulse. That's a century-long climate problem we're creating today, and it's time we simply don't have. And what's crazy is that this is happening at the worst possible time. Our forests are one of our greatest allies against climate change, absorbing about 1/3 of all our carbon emissions. We are actively subsidizing the destruction of the very ecosystems we desperately need to protect. So after all of this, what's the final takeaway? Is biomass energy a hero or a villain in the climate story? The truth is, biomass is way too broad a term. Its value depends entirely on what you're using. Biogas from actual waste? That looks like a smart circular solution, as long as we can control the methane leaks. Biofuels from crops? That looks more like a dead end that just creates more problems. And burning entire forests for wood pellets? That's a false solution that just does more harm than good. So the conclusion is pretty clear. Biomass energy can be a helpful, small-scale tool for managing stuff we would otherwise just throw away. It can definitely complement real renewables like wind and solar, but it is absolutely not the scalable silver bullet replacement for fossil fuels that some have claimed it to be. And that leaves us with one final, bigger question to think about. While turning our waste into energy is a clever idea, maybe we should be asking, should our focus be on finding new ways to use our trash, or on figuring out why we're generating so much of it in the first place? What do you think?